Let me remind all of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it Bodhichitta Motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta motivation, we should participate in this Lamrim teaching, teaching on the stages of the path leading to highest enlightenment by Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa. Allow me to read about a page or two from this great Lamrim text, volume number 3 in the English translation of the Lamrim Chemo, and we are on page 138.
Gasala, Chabara Chiraya, Charabeko, Jaga, the Jigruso, Go, Deval, Jizekaya, Jizayanda, Chayame, Do, Teno. Russia go very big, you go, Nani, Rajimel, Jungju, so Miran, the way better. Kete de da gu de no jo me ji jo pa be de shi wa na cha le me wa to ji she so ra shi ji shi ba ngu me zhe ba go ba de ba ke de ngu ba ta ji je ra shi ku la ye me na che ji se ra shi me ra yi go ba me ne so she zun do ni ngu ba me zhe ba go ba ke ba je me ba xin de shao yin de ke de ran shi ye dong me de wa ni ga ga la jung shi so mi ru no ku ja ra shi je dong me de kan ni ke me ne be jun me de nya天上个东的天没容的这我是谁的火着了，中间说没得别讲没把它马些，点把些了我说把天我那些执行，这玩意儿那些东边说了他容啊等没东边说了没什么里边写的送别写的，我把就把来讲我把当把事情了我错了他妈的把其他的人说的。西巴地那么继续的，这我把他就到那东西他这的叫我女儿，那东的些我不懂这，东南亚东西他这的叫我女儿写送给切肉，他底下个，他刚才开始写成的了，刚才朋友俺们对呀，他底下的那刚刚把写的那的我们录嘛的是，那多当点就了送对了呢。kata ene rashi mato mes da kaji mewa mambo suba wa tik tiksin le mena ene rashi mewa sungbe thongde le ten mewa thongde shene mani phumba tabu tisi warwa pene chashi ere shena phumba khata shabla soba te shashi shena phumba niya meza ta phumba mindu sana phumba temi dindiyo ni o tile chiga phumba mewa niya bala ene tawa niya la waris rwa o di tawa niya mari ene tanto tawa niya bala ene tishe waris ta rong peke ta so kelang pe tamsik domba pene ta lakbar chungsho dewa shida meke chibung sirung go warwa ta teme genye dewa ge tsilung dewa kanshi domba mangpo yaw tiye ene sui she langba tele ye langdo she ne domba tilo sung tiga sosa zhiza she ene tene peke ome shungling zhiba she ne ene kebe angbo zi tene ene yu ringbo zhigo waris o ti mandi nana ene karsa ti kwa na ya togo waris what that teenage inside.
So Geshe read from page 138 to 141. So we have witnessed many different arguments between essentialist and Prasangika Madhyamikans, and included in those arguments is also the position upheld by some of the early Tibetan masters, Phuntsok in Tibetan, and which I think included the Hoshang Mahayana, who came to Tibet and propounded the view of nothingness. Okay, so what that view states is this: that if things do not exist intrinsically, then they cannot exist at all. So basically, they have translated the absence of intrinsic existence or emptiness of intrinsic existence as being complete non-existence. Okay? And so when Madhyamikans made this, Prasangika Madhyamikans made this point that things do not exist intrinsically and they could not exist intrinsically, then they said, well, then in your view, nothing exists at all, right? Because they translated it absence of intrinsic existence as complete non-existence. So which is a very erroneous view, if you will. And so then looking at the ultimate kind of analysis that we do to substantiate the point that nothing exists intrinsically, we say, for example, take a vase or a pot, for example. Okay, a pot has different parts and characteristics. And if you analyze the pot, what is pot? Is it the brim of the pot? Is it the belly of the pot? Is it the bottom of the pot? Which part is pot, right? When we dissect the pot at the end, right, we don't find the pot. So that unfindability, is concluded as being, okay, pot doesn't exist at all now. So that is the erroneous conclusion. But just because pot is unfindable under the ultimate analysis, it does not mean now the pot does not exist at all. What it really means is pot does not exist intrinsically, not that it doesn't exist at all. Okay? So that's an important point to remember. But to be able to understand that very view of the ultimate nature, emptiness of intrinsic existence, is not an easy task. Okay? And so that's why here it is stated that we really need to accumulate a lot of positive energy or merit, right? Do the purifications. So whatever ethics we have committed ourselves to abide by, the basic ethics really involves abandoning the 10 negativities of body, speech, and mind. That's a very basic fundamental. And then you might have taken layperson's ethics, upasaka or upasika ethics, vows. Or maybe on top of that, you might have taken any other kinds of ethics. It is of utmost importance that we observe our ethics purely and then engage in purification of negativities and accumulation of merit and wisdom. So through this kind of practices, and then we rely upon those who have expertise in the, with regard to the ultimate nature of things, and we read authentic texts explaining and elucidating that ultimate nature of things. So through all this, combination of efforts together, then we will be able to gain insight into emptiness or the absence of intrinsic realities. Otherwise, there is no easy way out of that, to that. So that's what's being, stated here.
Any rangi motoja, any unit na shot being gaming jo toya di siva moto jil, mombo yo mari siwarwa. Chedakaris, the guy you did what I hear it is so gassy. Taki Raji Yevale. Tizi Shembechi, they did not go to Ralova Jersey. What is what? Raji Yevale. Tizi Shembechi, the Sidanata, and that seems generous to get away.
No.
Toma Meva, the Pigay, and the dancing Shambashuka, Tionge. In the Tomba Piggy Cursa, in the new the Yabuting on top Toma, yes. No, you know, I change it, Sanjig. Tibetan shodo Radlova Chiva is in the some years of the Mombasa Sanjin, Shashuba, show song Marsiva, so that show Masumuchi Huyadi, because Radlova Chiva is show Masumuchi, show somebody Lovas and Masumura. Or the Shadati, Suya Jeda talk over years and the Tindres, or Cheda Karsa. The Karsa did Dirawa, Savi because it was in the Mashi. This we show you could so then you call me the Mimana no never there say Shungo Dishungo Mawok on the Sanjin in the Tambi de song or is so that this one in the Karza Shugo Magov, what this one in it. This one had the Karzan. She done Roshina and the Tomba Tambo shows the same didn't see me those picket. Sang took you that sang you never to do that in the chill lounge. I begin as you some go as a chagor. So Timbers, you go in the new room as I think go race. Or tell it that in any sharing somebody judging that in it show go in the show song.
No,
the day.
So in the middle of page 138, actually the third paragraph from the top, where it's stated, I quote, "Since certainty about appearances and certainty about emptiness almost never develop together, it is extremely difficult to find the Madhyamikan view. And this is followed by Nagarjuna's quotation work from chapter 24 of Fundamental Treatise of Mula Madhyamika, Umasawashiram Tibetan, and which I'll read later and translate the explanation given on this. So as we go back to those who have not yet realized the absence of intrinsic reality, and the reference here that we make among them is the Hoshang who came to Tibet, and so who thought that if nothing exists intrinsically, then nothing could exist at all. So it becomes a nihilist standpoint. And so that is because it's not easy to understand the emptiness. Okay, it's not like Hoshang is the only one who failed it, because the fact that it's very difficult to understand how you realize that nothing exists intrinsically, but then everything exists and functions. The law of cause and effect exists and function. The law of karma and outcomes exists despite the fact that nothing exists intrinsically. So that certainty about the appearances and the certainty about emptiness, coming together is a very, very rare and difficult. So no wonder, most of us have not yet understood it, and some have misunderstood it. Only few understood that, because it's the difficulty. It is the profundity of that nature, right? That requires a lot of things we need to do, as we explained before. Okay? So from Fundamental Treatise, the stanza quoted states, let me read it and then translate the explanation given. Therefore, knowing that those of limited intelligence would have difficulty understanding the depths of his teaching, the mind of the sage turned away from giving this teaching. So what this means is, those with limited intelligence, I think it refers to us, that since beginningless times, we have been so habituated in grasping at intrinsic reality that basically, really it is influencing everything that we perceive and we see. It's rather difficult for us to imagine that things really don't exist intrinsically. This is like what? I have been so, habituated in seeing the world from intrinsic reality point of view. And that's why Shakyamuni Buddha, our historical teacher, after he became enlightened, we call Buddha, okay? And before he gave his first teaching on the Four Noble Truths, it is said that, he remained in silence for 49 days, And at one point, Buddha kind of, indulged in this kind of thinking, which is kept very beautiful in the poetic expression that Geshe quoted from his memory, and luckily your translator happened to know that too. So which is then a plus point, right? Then I can translate what it is. Buddha said, that I have realized something very profound, and that's free of all elaborations. Okay? And what I have realized is almost like the ambrosia or the nectar. But then I don't think anybody is here that could understand it, right? So therefore, I decided to, remain in silence in the forest. Okay? So that's how so Buddha, remained in silence for 49 days before he really gave his first teaching. And so we can make this argument. Buddha is someone in the beginning who generated bodhicitta for the sake of sentient beings, right? Who said, I wanted to become Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and when I become Buddha, then I'll help sentient beings. So with that promise, and with the realization of that promise, he should be really excited to give teaching as soon as he became Buddha. Like, hey, now I'm Buddha, I have something to say. He couldn't. So why did he decide to remain silent for 49 days despite all that excitement? It's because at that moment, it was as if he could not find suitable, listeners or the receptive listeners of his teaching. And so he remained in silence. And then later, of course, the Brahma and the Indras and all these divinities approached Buddha and said, what, please try to teach something. I don't know what they actually said. They might have said, there will be somebody who will understand you, I guess, right? So they approached him and pleaded him to teach. And then Buddha thought, okay, I'll do that. And this is how Buddha gave his first sermon on the teaching on the Four Noble Truths at the request of Brahma and Indra and others. So 49 days, the sage, meaning Buddha, turned away from giving his teaching, right? So he said, I realize there's something profound, free of elaborations, like a nectar, very profound, but nobody can understand it. So I'm just going to, keep quiet, right? So that's what it meant, right?
rinje chwa le ja rishi karsa lyundi mezani raj ngozu juyo ta no kang gi che sen ne wa mai ba te te tam ju ne me ba se ne chasa ngozu mai ba samote go sheta bu sen da de la ju ba ju an chen de sabjir kyu ye shebar ka tok chue de te na tibe tok shong ne 그걸 되나 뒤에 상지 특별 상지네 최대 발에 도반 조르스 어디서 다다 리제트 원래 리지류인데 메상 이에서잖아 라지 무슨 주요하시대잖아 근데 소소비게 다 류고 메상 배 사지 일에 부부 얘네 내다 나세게 얘네 비게 된 신경게 얘네 무슨 비게 무슨 저거 소다 무슨 저거라 소소 저거를 얘나 될 비게 류를 샤히엔다고 제도가 말서 류를 샤히엔시니 대거로 왔어 무슨 통기라 다때 스문데와 많이 봤을 때다 이네 디데 통기래야 이네 또 될이야 이네 녀반데네 빵 랑도 시도고 말이시고로 다 뒤에서는 다 채셔야 돼 유전으로 와 그래서 뒤에 덤주 내매 봤을 때 소소기우 주유도 뭐에 이네 네 주유에서 매배 이네 차서 그 돈이 되더라 그래서 차서 무슨 많이 봐. 무슨 수주 유도 뭐죠. 근데 돈이 돼. 근데 심지어도 근데 간대신도 레라고 또 토그래. 또 토고 말어 왔어요. 그죠? semla dela yog basi. 근데 간대시 데라도 또 데라스까지 매와라 와. 제때까지 매 또 토고 말이지. 무슨 주의 집에 사실 일에 부벌 게 좀 못어 봐. 애는 무슨 주의 방에 상모도 또 내요 말 왔어. 제때 딘데 다 생각하면 돼. 히바가 톡슈는 상지의 톡슈네 되는 집에 상지네 쉐덴발에 도번 줄 당기해야 돼. 이게 다서 뭐 상지는 샤킬고 쇼 마스무 쇼기를 해야 돼 봐. 어떻게 있어?
So at the bottom of page 138, we have three stanzas quoted from Arya Nagarjuna's Precious Garland or Ratna Avali or Rinjin Tenwa in Tibetan, which captures the same message that was stated earlier in the chapter 24 of Fundamental Treatise. So the first stanza reads, when the impurity of this body, which is coarse, directly observable, and continuously appearing, does not stay with the mind. Explanation given on this is that when we look at our body, this physical aggregate of the body, really it is the basis of all kinds of problems and sickness, And if you look within our body, really, there's a lot of impurities, and the modern translation is yuckies, inside. And this is a contaminated body, for lack of a better word in English, we call sakje, right? It is my first footnote, because it's the outcome of afflictive emotion and contaminated karmic action. Okay, so there's nothing good about it in that sense. And so these are something, in many ways, we ordinary beings can directly see for ourselves. We can observe it. What kind of a body, this brings a lot of problems, sickness, there's, smells, all kinds of things. Despite all these things that we can observe, we are still very much attached to it, isn't it? We grasp at it. As much as we have been told we should renounce this body, work for I still like it. So you say, there's something we can witness for ourselves. It smells, it has a lot of yuckies, it is, it is becoming old and is, all these things, Actually, I have a pain right here, so it's really giving me, it is old body. So despite that, still we are so much attached to our body. We find it so difficult to let go attachment to the body, isn't it? Even on the basis of that. That being the case, then the second stanza says, then how could the excellent teaching which has no basis, is not immediately apparent, is most subtle and profound, easily come to mind? That being the case, then how could we really easily understand emptiness of intrinsic reality that is so profound, that is so subtle, that's not easily observable, that's not right in your face kind of thing. How could we ordinary people can easily understand this? This is rather very difficult. The things we understand based upon our experiences, right? The smelly body, the drowsy body, whatever, but still we are so attached to it. We find it difficult to let go. So because of that, so we thought about these things, and the third stanza says, realizing that because of its profundity, this teaching is difficult to understand, the sage, our Buddha, when he became Buddha, turned away from giving this teaching. So he decided to remain in silence for 49 days. He said, this profound thing, I don't know who would understand it, so I just have to think more carefully, and he remained in silence.
Okay. 写电视都送了呢，现在多个我送过呢，这他们不，熊现在个我们说不原来这碰到了是原来这让是被日本让一没电了把被通了吹呢，这是写到的送了的电的但到这些嘛写到是，你这可能一别个，你现在多个啊，他的有这么回事吧是？这到这多个啊，这个嘛因为他的好像写那些呢。아니 형백에 선택하시네 아니 범발로서 벌리네 연라도 샤이제 딱동제네 딱동이 니야요 머시마 송요로 와 진짜 손에 딱동이 니야 메와텔라 아니 런시 메와다 지도 메바 니 찍도 추니 아니 민두사다 아니 딱동이 유니야 메자 충계 강사 거야 민두서 아니 충계다 유인인가 민두서 타이도 메와 되고다 타이도 메와 다 진짜 지금 민두서 냐발라 아니 돈이 도고요나 ini toni to ashi kira hatang le la bo re jo ini kaile khaya chi amin to asi ti soi no to to re se ra de de karsa de se do karsa de dar nge ba chin ji lo de chang ba to ni ba jo na ni la xiu xi ji na wo o de da fu nga ma xia na yi ni de toni to ini toni to kaile ja go ro
So on the top of page 139, so it's stated that based upon what Nagarjuna stated in the chapter 24 of the Fundamental Treatise and also in the Precious Garlands that we quoted, realizing emptiness of intrinsic reality is a very difficult thing. It's not an easy task at all. Okay? That being said, if we look at, in the authentic treatises, where there's an explanation about how we can do ultimate analysis of things, right, to explore that nothing exists intrinsically. And somebody like Hoshang who came to Tibet, applied that analysis like to a phenomenon like a pot, right? He said, okay, pot, I want to say which one is the pot? Is it the top part or the middle part or the bottom part or which one? So when we dissect the pot, at the end, we don't find the pot. And then he concluded, well, pot doesn't exist. And then he looked at himself. I'm the one who is analyzing the pot. Who am I, right? He looked at his maybe head to toe. He couldn't find himself. Okay, I don't exist. Really, nothing exists at all, right? And that was his conclusion. But it's an erroneous, wrong conclusion. And here he said, if emptiness is that easy to find, he said, then that's not difficult at all, right? You analyze emptiness, you know what? Okay, I don't find it. Okay, so nothing exists at all. If it's that easy, then he said, anybody could have easily done it, right? There's no need to make a lot of effort, but that's not what it is. What that ultimate analysis tells us is things don't exist intrinsically, not that things don't exist at all, as the Hoshang who came to Tibet concluded it, but that's why, he went on an easy task, and then he got into the to the wrong side,
These Lotto them target Ning don't you sooner T Gondi, then you omit Hung number Tavanami, don't Nikiton, dancing, then they told to somebody, Keba Omabi, make Keba the Lobo Sanji Janda on Dawatabe, Papa Yasi, you go about Hama Malu but Java. Jerry said, Charlie, ne, then deal, then, Rashime, never. The Ranking don't be over them. You did Sharju La, he to a mini way, saying ever tongue showers. Said that the Toba God is that Toba God, but the time. They would pay charging that this is what I call you know, Rangi to say, Rangi mean the miss, Tangoma, Rangi, Madam Take my years, Rangi, Madam said, Yomaris, any Junjaganga Rangi to is that I'm going to Shigorva. Tajang in the Rangi mean the Meva, the Rangi, Meva, Tonji in Dora, the Doshonga. Said the Dushong is, they said that Rangi Meva, like United in Naja, Shaji Taji Tebati, any Papa Yazi go back to my Sanji Jang, the water between my Teshas.
No, so.
Otherwise, I tell those lower the Jeton, David, Papa Yazi go back, someone will live at Terry near that Papa Yazi, Papa Yazi said that the Yawu, Ludo, I am the other one.
No.
Or do you have to go back to any pick Terry near my live any Chijamolo touch of a day, the Queen to tea is.
No.
A tendel deni rajime wali nyebat telu da rajin ye etong be ngobo nam yunju sa da ene tendi be juje ye rajime lu rajime wal teni ene shaji tamje ene sukto meza jig to go za karsha de yeba meba doya de meba yeba doya yundo da zo sho wa rajin yun yundo ja yo mar ba ko sheda ene shaji tamje te ya ji o tide nyeba de ene hingi de me do ba ene nyeba thang se da hingi de me do de mare so tak je shen den fa ni da hiện da khaze de mare khaze la na ani be am jo thak bo she dia zin hin ti ma so si ro wa chig chig la de men do so pa la de men do so na it ti du go ro wa ho ti so ho ti thang go so da lam chat du ti de do.
So then the middle paragraph on page 139 where it stated that in order to realize emptiness of intrinsic reality, which is very subtle and profound, as propounded by great Nagarjuna and his spiritual sons, especially Aryadeva, we have to rely upon their authentic works and illustration of the works by great masters like Buddhapalita and Chandragupti. Because Buddhapalita and Chandragupti illustrated Nagarjuna and Aryadeva's view of what emptiness is. And that's the way we will be able to understand what emptiness is. That emptiness means dependent arising, and dependent arising is the very reason why things are empty of intrinsic reality. So among the arguments that have witnessed the two major trends that we have seen is this. They are the essentialists, Nguyamawa. So Nguyamawa, the essentialists, they believe that things exist intrinsically. Okay, they must exist intrinsically. And so they think that if things don't exist intrinsically, then they cannot exist at all. So then they decided that because there is law of cause and effect, relationship among things, right? They said things exist intrinsically, right? Because there are cause and effect relationship among the things. So that's why they are the essentialists. They are on the extreme of what called eternalism, as we say. And then the Hoshang who came to Tibet came along, believing that things should exist intrinsically. And then when he indulged in the ultimate analysis, he realized that he couldn't find the things. So he decided, well, nothing exists at all now. So for him, the absence of intrinsic reality has been translated into complete non-existence. That's how he has fallen into the extreme of nihilism. So of these two extremities cases, the worst is the annihilist position or the nihilist position, just like the Hoshang who came to Tibet did it. He said, now nothing exists at all, do whatever. Okay? So he really got it really terribly wrong here. Whereas the essentialists, they said, well, things exist intrinsically because there is a cause and effect relationship among things, right? So that's the other extreme, but of these two extremities, that's the better option, actually, because they still believe in law of karma and outcomes. They think all of this exists intrinsically. But the Prasangika Madhyamikan's position is that nothing exists intrinsically, but all things exist and function just fine. Okay? So that is the crux of the matter. How can we understand that nothing exists intrinsically, but at the same time they exist, and there is a cause and effect relationship among things, and everything is dependent arising. Okay? And so that's why in this position, dependent arising, Tyndall, Pratyek Samutpat, and the emptiness of intrinsic reality have the same meaning, isn't it? So emptiness means dependent arising means emptiness. And they complement each other, right? They don't contradict each other. So they said, because things exist dependently, nothing exists in and of itself. Okay? Dependent arising is the reason that nothing exists intrinsically in and of itself. Because things are empty of intrinsic reality, right? So things are able to have cause and effect relationship. Things are able to have interdependent relationship on each other. Okay? So that is the viewpoint of Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, illustrated by Buddhapalita and Chandragupti. Sorry, so then the last sentence of that middle paragraph, which is really important. Let me read it. And this is how dependent arising bestows certain knowledge of the essence of intrinsic existence. This is how it dawns on you that it is things which are devoid of intrinsic existence that are causes and effects. So as Geshe explained, now it is of utmost importance that each of us should really use our best of critical intelligence and analyze these things, whether Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, Buddhapalita and Chandragupti makes any sense or not, isn't it? And develop certainty through our own reasoning and analysis in this particular viewpoint. If we have that kind of a certainty, then nobody can shake us and change our heart, right? If we don't do analysis from our part, right, and we listen to this story, it looks like, okay, you got a good point, right? Okay, I'm with you today. And then somebody else comes up like, well, maybe she got another better point. I don't know, maybe today I'll do. So we will fluctuate between this and that, and we will be neither, right? So it's very important that each of us should, understand these different viewpoints and then do the analysis for ourselves and develop the certainty in this teaching and in this reality.
Nipa look the Chitaka students said the that got it. Tata Hajang de Vaji Tatini.
No.
In the Tijulia, Ningobolu, they were here.
No.
Says the Hajang de Gobolu Gomba in Sigora.
No.
That Gonzas and the Gobolu Gomba Sigora. That if it that Gobolu Shung the game are Johnson. In the Hajang de Denver, in Gonzia, the Denver to. That did go to Pongo of the little Shung Shower. What that thing you want that was.
So now we go to the next sub-point at the bottom of page 139, and the caption reads, those who have got the e-copy of this book, sub-point B, how those systems contradict this distinguishing feature of Madhyamika. Yeah. And as Geshe just said, Hoshang, who came to Tibet, claims that he really understood Nagarjuna's viewpoint. He said, I'm a follower of Nagarjuna. Give me a break. I really understood what he meant by it. Yeah? So he's very adamant about that absence of intrinsic reality means complete non-existence. And that's the viewpoint of the Nagarjuna. He really understood it, and everybody else did not. Right? That's his claim. But whereas the Nagarjuna, the followers, they said, yeah, that's not what Nagarjuna said. You really goofed on that one, right? So there's a contradiction, isn't it? He claims he understood Nagarjuna, and the Nagarjuna real followers said, no, you did not understand Nagarjuna. So there is a rift, right? A disagreement. So this is what we need to sort out. What is really Nagarjuna's viewpoint? Did Tachan get it right? Or did Nagarjuna say something else? So that's why we have to look up in the Nagarjuna's works to find out what is Nagarjuna's standpoint on the ultimate nature of phenomena. So that's what we're going through now.
No, today, that Jeremy Chitanda in Gonzo, and that Gulu looked at Yaranji, any Yonji Meva like United Namja Tigri, Slap. Hashas in United in the Rangi of any Ranji Meva, the United Meva, Jikba Switch. That you did the Chajilandos and Mesa or what? But this said, that Gonzo sent the Marisi Lab in Sheduta, that Jeremy Ting Gawate and Gonzolia. That Pangbushi, Damgate or said that Kaji Kizahayan is daughter, Tangobolu daughter as a competition. And that thing go out to the Modi, what did my show, what did that? Go out, Tongue that do or what did you want? I didn't go out, Tongue, but you go.
So, Manju Shri Lama Tsongkhapa or Jerembuche, who's sitting behind me, right in the center, so he in this Lamrim Chemo and other works too, he's trying to elucidate what is Nagarjuna's viewpoint on the ultimate nature of things, right? Try to elucidate it. And in the process of doing that, he's trying to show the contradictions between how Hashang thought he understood Nagarjuna's viewpoint and what really is actual Nagarjuna's viewpoint. By showing us the contradictions, then Chandragupti leaves it for us to make the decision, right? Which of these two positions, right, do we really think it really makes sense, or that really reflects the reality as it is, and then we, make our own decisions for ourselves. That is Lama Tsongkhapa's approach. He will show the contradiction and leave it for us to, okay, now you deal with it. I just showed you, the two sides here. And so once again, Arya Nagarjuna's real position is that phenomena are empty of intrinsic nature or reality, right? But things exist, and causes and conditions can produce different results. There is a cause and effect relationship among things, and that stands as it is, even though things are empty of intrinsic reality. Okay. Now, the Hoshang said, I understood Nagarjuna. He said, so Nagarjuna says that nothing exists, intrinsically, and I agree with that. And so he concluded that nothing exists at all. He said, if you accept cause and effect relationship among things, then things have to exist intrinsically. Okay? But Nagarjuna said nothing exists intrinsically. So therefore he said, but there is no cause and effect relationship. Nothing exists at all. Right? That's how the Hoshang view diverse from Nagarjuna's viewpoint.
남자 대 차를 미룽이 징조라서베 남자 타주에지 조빙 예바랑시 메바 켈로 고발라스 다티 고발로 있으나 에니 랑시 트발레 야 샤지 탐지 릉구마리 랑시 마저블 샤지 타지 테그리스 고발로 또 송샤스 다 저런다 랑시 메네 메고스 라고 거라스 제때 때 겨와타도 로거라 케자 고바다 랑 고트바 랑시 메나 헤지 히스 다 랑시 트바 메발라 에니 드네 유두요 마르시 에니 피게 랑시 트바 가도다 동다바 랑시 메다 드네 짠 라고 마르시 코나 메바 코나 마드지 가제 켜바 자고 마르시 어디서 거라 에디 메나 지히스 랑시 메나 드네 영여 에니 랑시 메 슈리 영여 유야 가다 라그레스 거다 유도 랑시 조거라 랑시 메 라발라야 마르시 거라 근데 징저의 깨가라서 봐 동다바 소이 개발조 먹어 랑시 고베 리베 고바이노 셰반 랑시 메바라 징저등 징주소스 샤비 초바 체달 마가 숨히스 어디 다 겨와다다 저런 고벌르로 랑시 메 징저 샤리타리 샤고리 저런 신의 랑시 메는 되는 샤리타지 메바 주고 그랬어 제가 다티시도다 저런 데바시네 에니 샤지탑지 까도 가지 고르르 데바 가가 까도 가지 고르르 랑시 메장 샤지탑지 테송을 저 랑시 메는 메베 찹스고 그러와 근데 개와다다 샤서 어디 샤야스고 다 그 소미스나 저런 상호 동스고 그러와
So at the bottom of page 139 it stated that according to Arya Nagarjuna, nothing exists intrinsically, and not even an atomic particle, right, exists intrinsically. Despite that, things exist, and things could be causally related to other things, okay? And law of karma and actions function as it is, and so does the law of cause and effect. Okay? So that's Nagarjuna's viewpoint. Now the Hoshang, who came to Tibet, he said, Nagarjuna asserts nothing exists intrinsically, so that means everything is unfindable under ultimate analysis, so nothing exists at all. So there cannot be cause and effect relationship among things, there cannot be karmic actions and results. Okay? And he thought that's Nagarjuna's conclusion. Okay? But his interpretation and understanding of Nagarjuna is completely antithetical to what Nagarjuna actually said. What Nagarjuna said is, things are empty of intrinsic reality, but things function, right? Because we can talk about how samsara exists because of the causes and conditions, and we can also liberate ourselves from samsara due to create the causes and conditions, right? So Nagarjuna accepts that samsara exists, nirvana exists, right? And despite within the framework of absence of intrinsic reality, whereas the Hoshang who came to Tibet said, well, we cannot talk about liberation and nirvana and samsara because nothing exists at all and nothing is findable under ultimate analysis. Okay? So that view directly contradicts what Nagarjuna said. Nagarjuna accepts, right, law of karma, actions and results. Nagarjuna accepts bondage or samsara. Nagarjuna accepts liberation or nirvana, right? But Hoshang said, well, these things don't exist at all. So his viewpoint is completely opposite to what the Nagarjuna has asserted.
that cool in Jawa. He the Lobo given the Jindulas of a Condi Namja Tanya de Inlas. Kuja Tanya de Titan David John with the Yamna. And Lobo that you said, the Jindu Tanya de Yusi, may say, Rangi Messi or is that could Tanya the you are the Yavain the Karsati did it. Don't you Tanya the Yavada, Chidon Yavain Karsati. Keba Mashev inside. That Rangi you about Tanya you about Chipati do is
No, sir.
Then that is a love in any near Tanya the good Tanya the USA, the Kaisangi, Tanya the USA, the tumor you said that I don't look young, no you told about me Tanya to say the Barava. Oh, good Tanya you said tumor you said, no. Karsanyam the Tiny River mine, then the Lobon Dawe Shebani, Tanya the children ranking water. Rahimeo in Bache and Duelas, Lone Data Bagani, and Tanya de and Rahim to be remote or made Songa, teacher of killing or was.
No, sir.
Titan and Rahim go be requiting, Rahim go be requiting, Tanya de Rahika or was.
No,
the Kaisana, any Tanya de Rahito killing and Gobolo Sunga, the Tanya de Rajiva Yoris, the end is in Hibjam Shama, Charva, Rahim go by Tanya de Rahito in the Tondo Tanya de Yusi, Katara, or the Kadu Resupata. Tanya de Rahim go be shed, Rahim go be repeating Russo, young Gober, David Sheriam, Jubi Sher, Tanya de Jinduso Gaba, Hindu Celos, this is the Rajin go be reporting in the Tanya in the Jindu, that Jindu Shaji Namja Tamji, any Kagawa, any Sebo Shirayas.
No, sir.
It was Sebo Reda, the Gadis, and this was a low dog, the Rajin was a Tanya to me, is Larva.
No,
or it is that Kira Tanya is a Digmundus. It don't you to go with reporting Tanya to range of a cargo with us. The energy you dig a card was what Tisha did in the Tanya to Rajin to you, don't ever make Karsa. Lomonska Tanya the inside the Simshashi the Tigmundu us. Made the Tonta go report the Tanya the range of a car, where she take along and do to us. But this year inside.
So Geshe is giving explanation on the things you read at the bottom of page 139 and on top of page 140. So Hoshang, who came to Tibet, he said, no, I accept conventionality, okay, just like you. Yeah? Tanya Diva, I accept things exist conventionally. Just like you. So the argument you're making against us that I did not understand Nagarjuna, it really, it's not right. Because I accept conventional reality and I accept ultimate reality. So ultimately, nothing exists at all. And conventionally, I accept things exist. But where it really differs is what the Hoshang, who came to Tibet, said conventionally, his really conventionality is not the way we usually understand conventionality. His conventionality means things only exist for mistaken perceptions. Okay, tunang. Okay, that's his understanding of conventionality. Okay, and so he has taken the absence of intrinsic reality to mean complete non-existence at all. Okay? So in his position, so he could not assert cause and effect relationship among things and law of karma and result because nothing exists at all, right? So those things are not feasible. Okay? Whereas in Nagarjuna's viewpoint, all of these things exist conventionally and they function just fine, right, as causes and conditions and outcomes, even though none of this exists intrinsically. And so the Prasangika Madhyamikans, or here as the Lama Tsongkhapa is sort of explaining here, that all the reasonings Prasangika Madhyamikans use to refute intrinsic reality, right, intrinsic existence, for you, meaning the Hoshang who came to Tibet, for you, this also refute conventional existence of things, isn't it? Because you said, if things don't exist intrinsically, then how could they exist at all? Right? They couldn't exist in any other way. So therefore, Nagarjuna says nothing exists at all. Nothing is findable, right? So that's for all the reasonings Prasangika Madhyamikans use to refute intrinsic reality, not the conventional existence, also refutes conventional existence for the Hoshang who came to Tibet. Yeah? So that's why his interpretation of Nagarjuna is a wrong interpretation and misinterpretation of Nagarjuna. Because Nagarjuna accepts conventional realities as they are, right? Causes and conditions exist, and karma and outcomes exist.
Dona Ranshi Meba Dang Jingru Dang Janga so Gawan Ranshi Tomba Lukoni Naja Devanja Shazaba Shujibu di Keji Kaba in Tireta Dorduna any Ranshi Meba Dang any Jingru in Gawa so do Tangla. Any Rangi Tomba Condi Navia Chaji Kaya Rungumaris. Timberman, Oma do ya Rangi Meva Chaji do or the Code Rangi Medo that Chaji Teo Marava or the Shasi. Today, so that any Ome Kiju be any Rangi may Chaji Nada Taji Shita Tabati, any Kiju the Chokado, Usuver. The Kadu, Tika Maina. Any Rangi to be Gazal Kevar Jamu was in YouTube, Rangi Moro Gibe Tai, the car said, you them do us. Queen Chicks on the Ra, Yubata, Rangi Yuba, Nevada Rangi Meva Tonju on the Ra. Till then, any Rangi to go with the Tai, the Rai, because the Yuba cars go around. What it is, the Ingavari is that the Churung di Gavati Gobble of the Ingavata for a chassis. Today, Yubata Rangi Toji. Meva the Raji Meva Toji Mashana, and Raji Raji Tobago Ripati, in it, you need Gazal Kevajamo, Shaji Car said, the Chorong said, in Judem Harvard, you did take them do so. Or even that isn't that door, didn't it?
No, sir. So in the middle of page 140, there's a paragraph, it reads, in brief, if you claim that the absence of intrinsic existence contradicts bondage, freedom, production, cessation, etc., then it will be impossible in terms of either truth to give the full and correct teachings on nirvana and single existence within emptiness, the emptiness of intrinsic existence. You have therefore denied the unique feature of Madhyamika. So this is what Lama Tsongkhapa is pointing out to the Hoshang who came to Tibet. So therefore, although you claim that you have understood Nagarjuna's viewpoint, but you are contradicting and you have failed to understand this unique position of Madhyamika. And as we have talked about this quite a bit now, here is the gist of something, that for the Hoshang who came to Tibet, who claimed that he understood Nagarjuna, he is a follower of Nagarjuna, for him, Tanya de Yuva, if something exists conventionally, conventional existence equal to intrinsic existence. Okay? Conventional existence and intrinsic existence are one and the same thing. Okay? And non-intrinsic existence and complete non-existence are one and the same thing. Okay? That's how, right, he got it all wrong. Okay? Whereas for the Madhyamikans, right, conventional existence is not the same as intrinsic existence. Nothing exists intrinsically, but things exist conventionally, isn't it? That differs from what the Hoshang's viewpoint. Okay? And emptiness of intrinsic reality does not mean things don't exist at all. It does not equal to complete non-existence. So therefore, we can see the direct contradiction between Hoshang's understanding of Nagarjuna's viewpoint and the actual position of the Nagarjuna.
Oh, this Karsa. You take I made those that then Rashi go be you do go and Rashi Meval, Junjik so Miron Devi. Deba imbe tetane kete da kuno jomi pape de basho chele me wato chezo roji nichipa le ngumo zoba go batang kete ngumo de tamji ge roji ko le ye mena che ise ge roji mi roji do ba menu so chi zondo le ngumo zoba go bata chebar je me chen se wa inos tire da tone te se dire kare se na ene zondo ka se kete da kuno jomi jiwa me se di ngumo la go wa roji to yude re go ma yude na ya ga te go ma res 다들 그래서 kel mewa tewa gisi 제 고모 쯔바시 다들 고모들 대지 대디 샴지도 게데 고모 탐지 이런 걸 요면서 고모 다 러시면은 이 파도 쯔바시야 그 책도 요 말아 봐. 책 러시메비시 러시메 요바다 러시 요바지 동지로 봐다 땡게다 어디 고모 봐야 되다 그래 총아 딱 레샤스 근데 다 고모 양 Junde yama lago ma rangi ma do ne junde me wa re ru ma do junde yo ta rangi thob lago ro wa ta ha sha ka se junde in rangi thog ba deva chik ba she ta in rangi thob me wa junde me ba ta rangi thob me ba chik ba so go ma chik ba so ma ro jo rangi kar da di go ma deva til yun rangi yo ko ba ta rangi me ne me ba o tin deva ha sha chik ba she 다 고마게 근데 준대 매바 준대 사실 답이야 가만 무슨 저대에 장 매바 태그 말이 대 인상 라시 요고도 이 준대 켈린 거와 다 하샤게 이 윤의 라시 요그레스 라시 맨 매르시 소지 파자자로 라레 진짜 군이 쳐봐 송서 어디 그래서 고마래 도를 다 같이
So at the bottom of page 140 and top of page 141, we have stanzas quoted from two sources of Nagarjuna. First one is Fundamental Treatise, and the second one is Nagarjuna's Refutation of Objections. Okay, and these two stanzas actually capture the positions of essentialists, and their arguments with Madhyamikans. Okay. And essentialist position and the Hoshang who came to Tibet's position are different. Okay? In some respect, looks like they are same, but actually they are not. What the essentialists are saying is that, things exist intrinsically. Okay? But they don't say that if things don't exist intrinsically, they don't exist at all. Okay, they said things exist intrinsically, and they said why? Because there are causes and effect relationship among things, right? This we can witness, right? We can directly perceive and experience it. So therefore, they said cause and effect relationship exists, and that's why things are dependent arising. Things are intrinsically existent because they are dependently existent, right? That's the reason. Okay, so their viewpoint represents the eternalistic viewpoint, right? They don't deny the existence of things. They accept the existence of things, but they said they exist intrinsically. Now the Hoshang, claims that, things, first they claim that things exist intrinsically before they engage in the ultimate analysis. They thought things exist intrinsically, right? How else could it exist? So when they engage in ultimate analysis and nothing becomes findable under ultimate analysis, now they said, well, nothing exists at all. And so therefore, their position diverged from the essentialists in that they said, absence of intrinsic existence equals to complete non-existence. Okay. Essentialists don't deny the conventional existence of things. Now the Hoshang who came to Tibet denies the conventional existence of things. So this is where the two big differences between the two positions.
Then mirung this did that. That didn't want taxer of down to that page Kasha Lavia Mantaka, Rimbachi, and you are you don't sigmars, Madon sigmars. You may be said rather. This is Lavna in the Digmaris. You are my Meva in Bichari, where you are my charis. Meva, you are my Tiba Hidusia, Meva, you are my puzzle, Punsum Yomarabas. Or did Chonguton down to Omaris? You many you are Yaman Meva mother, you are my Meva say additional. Taxi is 아니 타기도 봐 타기 좋아가지고 아니 걔는 집에들이 가동 쉬어야 여러와. 근데 가동 쉬어야면은 이는 딱 봐셔야 영어 봐. 이거 뭐 있는 매바 임비 뭐 잡아주면은 이는 딱 봐시는 자리 쯔바시야지 몇 차고로. 뭔게 몇 차고로 와. 어디 형도 돈 누구면도 누구면도 가래서 색색 고자는 중지라서 봐 메데베 좀에 봐 마세 대바킬라서 봐 태바이노 히 드로기 싸와야 랑이도 베쇼 대다롱아 당 메도 베쇼 메로와 리퍼션 송베셔다 오만 주발도 고보도 무슨이라도 소도는 말아봐 대단한 중요소도 시바디나 베티 고보도 동이 다 잡죠 어디 오만 주발 단다 자히에 가서라 랑시 메바 메자 예바 인생라샤 엔 오만 주발 가서라 고보도 무슨이라서 바시도错了，我不东巴是人一东巴也是吧，从业能行，错了不是，有的的说吧，对呢，一点钱就南家没得样，不也马来西，这等从业说动嘞，是吧？这当从业人可能别个开始人些没家，人从业的从业这边没去家的要了哇，我第一个那一学浪多的学他们，人人些没讲，人有的钱就浪多的这个太少了，是吧？的，别呢。그래서 멜로디는 제주 송년 샤자 여러 와 미종 나 상지도 요 말이디 신나 디 송년디 송년집에 미키기고 와 제가 때나히 뭐버서 라시 요 말이디 라시면 애니 샤지랑도 간가 되게 돼서 애니 어머 집에 가서 송자스 제가 디바로데 샤야 미두서 다 라시 요바마이메바마시 바로 자 샤야 미두서
但是有把买没把买谁的给他，但他个人的收入少的，好像给的那边。
好像给他，好像。
现在家人就搞定了，那这个没着。
他知道的，他听着有啥，他都当时都懂的，因是不是那修的咱，他是马来西亚的那个，那大概那么长的时间，他这那个应该有没对吧？忙不些呀，比就这样都，有我们没有这样，可是他。当地特殊就是，朋友们都是忙不过的啊。
但是好像让就跟那没
了。对，好像如果有没没说的，有没说的，好像如果的。
是。
所以，die到底刚刚早写的的，他看带老多的没让我个，我一可能，因为他也的让他们那没被瞧不起，要进不来老多啊。但你以后没说的，看看呀，说起来没有，以后没说的是我说，让他没法没说的，中国有啊的，过是吧？中国人有个修嘛是吧？我这边的，可是跑车的我嘛是吧？我这里这样。
So on page 141, right on the top and to the middle, another objection and reply are presented there. And so this is case where when you are engaged in these argumentations with each other about different positions, and then you point out the fallacies in other position, and certain times you end up at such a weird sort of position, and you might end up making this kind of assertion, which really doesn't make any sense. But sometimes in the debate, right, you don't know, you get cornered, and you end up making a position that really doesn't make sense. But at the same time, you're just barely hanging on to something. Like, I don't want to be completely destroyed. I have something I just kind of here. I'm hanging on to a straw, right? That kind of thing. So now this objection says, I think it applies to Hoshang who came to Tibet as well. And so somewhere, as you apply all this reasoning, everything, and to point out the fallacies in their position, then he ended up saying, like, you know what? Well, this is what I'm saying. Things are neither existent nor non-existent, kind of thing, isn't it? Things are neither intrinsically existent nor non-intrinsically existent. Right? It sounds a very weird position, isn't it? And now the mathematics is saying there cannot be such position like that. Either things have to exist or they don't exist at all, right? You cannot have some kind of a weird position between existent and non-existent. So what kind of existence is that, right? It's neither existent nor non-existent, right? It's there cannot be such things because existence and non-existence are direct antithetical to each other. If something exists, that means it is not non-existent. If something doesn't exist at all, right, then you cannot claim that to be existent because it's non-existent. So you cannot have a position that says, neither existent nor non-existent. That can't be. So you get, that's the position here that's happening. And because, if we ask them, how could you say that? things are neither existent nor non-existent intrinsic. It's because they said, no, I don't say things don't exist. I said things exist, but exist for the mistaken perceptions, see? But the thing is that if things exist for the mistaken perception, they can't exist, right, in reality. So that's why it gets weird there. And then we have a quotation from Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise, as we have seen. Earlier we have seen quotations from Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise, which says that nothing exists intrinsically, but things exist, right, conventionally, and there could be cause and effect relationship among things. Now we find Chandragupti's commentary on the middle way. There is a stanza quoted in the middle of page 141. And the explanation given on this stanza, actually it's more than a stanza, that's like 6 lines or something, okay, is this, that even though things are empty of intrinsic existence, they exist conventionally and they function as they, as it is. And how is that possible? And the example given in this particular case is that of reflection of a face in the mirror. Okay? So when the causes and conditions assemble together, things happen, isn't it? You have a clean mirror, you stand in front of the mirror, yeah? Your face is reflected in the mirror. Now there is no real face in the mirror, right? But there is a reflection of face in the mirror, and that reflection of the face in the mirror generates the visual perception, right, of your face, isn't it? So this happens, although that face you see in the mirror is devoid of real face. In other words, that's not real face, right? But that exists. You cannot deny the reflection of the face in the mirror because of the causes and conditions assembled together. So in the same way, as causes and conditions assemble together, things are produced, right? And then things get destroyed, right, by other causes and conditions. And these things exist conventionally, even though none of this exists intrinsically. Yeah, does that make sense? So that's the analogy and metaphor used in Chandragupti's commentary on the middle way. No. So, okay. So, almost 12. We will stop there today, and we welcome your questions. Yes.
Now, in general, the Huashangs, they say things neither exist nor not exist. Yeah,
right.
But they say it from the very beginning, not only when at the very end when they're trapped in a contradiction. They say, let's say on page 139, they say things are neither existent nor non-existent. By that, do they mean that that things exist for? It's a matter of viewpoint or perspective. Is this what really the essence of it is? That for the Aryas in a mind in a meditative equity personal emptiness, things don't exist. But for an ordinary being like us, they exist. Is this what they mean basically?
That's what they mean.
So and ultimately, is this how they distinguish between the two truths as being a matter of perspective?
Okay, sure. I understood you. Thank you. Kurang kan dishuade di chigor da tanda de karso gore ngaji di sumbar wage karso gore ta yoba mai meba me se ta was lebar wage pen ngaji choba zan zam liya ane bete karso dinde ro ta lab ko chagor wage ji za tanda hoshan lang ngaji jabar wage da de hoshan liya choba zan ko utu ni len di jaba chigo ai ko nga sang san ne ane chue tamje de ro wage yoba yang mai meba mai ko lab sa sha ro wage Today, that yoba mai meba mai labe di ko tatan ji thone di she di yo mar wes ro wage pena di de lab sig mar wes go ta pena nyamsha yi she gi ngola ro wage che tam ji yo mar wage yo mar wa ine chidang ara zo gi ta karso gore ta shebe ngol che tam ji yo ro wage di sidu kang la nyamsha yi she ngola meba di gi ta ko kaso ta pena nga zo de ro wage tandam de meni lu sting yo ro wage ane chidang ngara zo yebe di kunja de meni lu sting yo ro wa o dinde gi kecha mar wes ro ko chi thanye mi gi ta da ji ma do ro wage ye de ko ta da di yo mar wes yoba mai meba mai se
di go mar ta di de no di ro ko da yoba se de chema da ne yo ma lo ro ra the chung yo res 现在我们 냠샤이고 메나 충어유라고 말아. 세메 다지 세메 또 세르마도 충어유모도 메스 말아. 그 충어유모도 메스. 유바 강가 힘어기 세기도 힘어기서 따와 또서도 살아. 이니 치바도 거리 미와샤 뭐지. 수송을 짜리 요물로. 어디서.
Geshe says, yeah, that's not the kind of distinctions or the perspectives that Hoshang who came to Tibet is offering. What Hoshang's view is, if that's what it meant, then there's no problem really. We can say for the wisdom in the state of meditative equipoise emptiness, right, is seeing a particular reality, which is the ultimate reality, right? But then for the ordinary perceptions, as we say, that's a conventional reality. That's not the kind of perspective Hoshang's offering. The fact is that Hoshang does not accept valid cognitions, sema. Okay? He said things exist for mistaken perceptions, right? There is no valid cognitions. Whereas in our position, what we said is, it's true that when you are in the state of meditative equipoise and emptiness, no conventional reality appears for that wisdom only exists, right? But outside that, there are valid cognitions that can verify the conventional existence of things, right? You and I, even as ordinary people, have valid cognitions. Now, the Hoshang who came to Tibet denies that. He said there are no valid cognitions. Remember I said before that until kind of Hoshang got into this ultimate analysis thing, everything he believed, right? Oh, there's a practice and you can be good and you can be bad, right? Then once he got to higher level, he claimed, I realized it, then he blew it all away. He said, nothing exists at all, right? Now do whatever. So that's the...
기성인 조서 걸사. 냠샤 위면은 매베 차리스. 정말 기다려 말이지. 이런 땡인지 집을 매도 나왔다는 테마면서 나와서
매서 니 알아 냠샤를 매베 듣고 매베 샤죠.
매베 샤죠. 그래서 대신에 이봐요 말이지. 티 냠샤 매베지 테마고 티 요버 테마 기다가 나와도 그 테마 말이지. 땡인지 집을 성기야. 다 테마다 요말로.
Right. So this is the Hoshang who came to Tibet. I always say Hoshang came to Tibet because I was a Hoshang. Right now we have to be careful. It's very nice to know that. And this is Hoshang's interpretation about the thing you just pointed out. He said, when you reach high-level realization profound, just like in the meditative equipoise and emptiness, right? For that wisdom, nothing exists. So he exactly points to that. He said, nothing exists at all. Look at that wisdom, right? Just because nothing exists for that wisdom, he concluded that nothing exists at all. And he thought that is the ultimate reality. And then he quotes the Samadhi Raja Sutra, the King of Concentration. That's exactly what it is. That's why he got it on the wrong interpretation, right?
Okay, thank you. But in general, it's very strange that Gyeltsen Kappa would be arguing with some obscure and random Zen master. Is Hoshang actually standing for other? Who are the Tibetan masters? Like, is he arguing actually with Gorampa, with Logchen and Rabchen, with his own guru Randawa? Are they also espousing similar views to Hoshang?
Right. Well, this is what the Tawaka de Nalia and Hoshang Tawaka in Gorwagi. So the Hoshang de Kanagi and the Zen singing still did the medicine Gorwagi. Then the Jerumuji Shung Pandinali in the Dimemshavana up and Pyongaraba and the Konadis or Koramba Yorwagi. Koramba the Longzen Ranjaba the Rovagi. Konaza Tawa to get the Hoshang Tawa, the Tindi or Yam Hadimba, the Jerumuji de Quadia Gashan, Ganangor, Nango Marisol.
Ale Kurotawa de
the Hoshang Tawa did that and the Koramba da Bena Casrosa Ranza becomes a Tawa tuned the Gaksha chair, Marisol.
That this is the Koruma de Tawa the candidate, that Jeremy thought that the Maris Tanda Gaza Tundu Keba Jamusi to Korumada. Really, Tundu Keba Jamusi, that Michenda Yedi Jira, Koruma Sega Yore. Tundu Keba Jamusi. Tongtama Jiga, Tonga Rusi, Tonga Bekivazan Jaumars, but Jutimin Jibu, Tondu Kevazan Jaumars, Sigor. Tondu Keva Jamuga, Hayan Jibaresa, Tanaka. That and the Longian Rosum said, Chidon, that new milk page and the Gidusina, Jerry Servo. Jita Kate of Nidis Redwa. The the Nilum say, you did not Hashang Tawa Namdari, song you are. In Tawa Namda, in any Jibutu, they come a little like in Sebastian Jana Pit, Sashia Marvesena, and take out Pumi Pigeta, Samunan in Tawa Zoa Marisi. Or the Manzo in the mother, when they said, 하샤다 다 남다리스
그렇지. 엔타디 초카타라 차도로다.
더 롱신 주든스야 줘라
그래.
그래서 주든스야 줘리
노소.
다디 니룽주스야 줘라
노소.
거기 리닝소스야 줘리
알아 노소.
디는 요르다
노소.
디는 요르세 도스 딜라샤 카사 연대저등에 막 동도 줄레가 셔봐서 디는 요래
노소.
어디 니룽주 파레시 벤조나 요사와 다다 포가메 송도 요사와
노소.
근데 그 로야라
그래.
어디서
알아 노소. So with regard to Koramba, a great master scholar, he asserts that there's no need to use the qualifying term intrinsic or ultimate when we deal with reality. So in that respect, I think his viewpoint also accords with what the Hoshang who came to Tibet said. In some point, he said there's no need to qualifying term, right? Because the ultimate analysis, nothing is findable, so nothing exists at all. Yeah. Now, with regard to Longchen Ramjaba, Longchen Ramjaba is considered in the Nyingma tradition just like Lama Tsongkhapa. Just like Lama Tsongkhapa is for the Gelugpa, Longchen Ramjaba is for the Nyingma tradition. A highly realized master and a great scholar, no doubt about it. And so it is said, he has authored many amazing works. There's something called the Seven Treasures, Gyeltsen. In the Seven Treasures, there is one treasure called Nilukzu, treasure on reality, if we translate like that. So in that text, I think one of the other great masters called Yunzen Gyaltsen, he did some analysis. He wrote in his work that Longchen Ramjaba said that the Hoshang who came to Tibet's viewpoint is actually correct viewpoint, right? He has, and then, if you raise the point, if that's the correct, then the great Tibetan religious king Tizun Deuzen, right, invited Kamal Shila from India, right, and had them have a big debate at the Samaya monastery. And according to the record, that Hoshang, lost the debate, and then he was asked to go home, right? So what was that all about, right? And Longchen Ramjaba, in that treasure on reality, it seems like, at that time, Hoshang's view was so profound, it did not fit with majority of the Tibetans' mindset, and that's why Tibetans did not understand him. Okay, so those viewpoints are mentioned. So if that's the case, we go with that, then that means Longchen Ramjaba at least, right? He is siding with the Hoshang, right? Viewpoint, right? Yeah.
So basically, Geshe is saying that in effect he's debating with them, not with Hoshang.
No, I think this is the 제르무치기 대시에 강가로 호샹님도 저에 소리 원에 저는 다디 롱제 랑자발을 수로 혼자님도 저바 차가 말해서 왔다. 저바.
다 차가 다디 롱제 랑자바 지당
세네데 개매요 말하다.
네. 다디로 다 하성 대송자다 단다 니 단다 제르 가야 지고 지가리고 다 내용도 송동한테 시나.
나래.
다 내용도 송야데 양 롱제 랑자바 코라 다도 공부를 하고 뭐라가. 지도 롱제 랑자는 시라기 개빈이들이 쓰고도와.
나래.
다 누자고 디데 담으로 송고라 사이가 담으로 송고라와.
나래.
시다 타직도 제 내용도 누야 요 당시요. 다. 인 롱제 랑자 공부하면 다 가서 해동 말와.
나래.
어디
So Geshe says that, of course, in this Lamrim, he does not mention in specifically Longchen Ramjaba as the opponent here. Only Hoshang who came to Tibet has been mentioned. But the extension of the thought, as I said, if what Longchen Ramjaba has really written in the traditional reality, that Hoshang got it right, then that means all the arguments that Lama Tsongkhapa is laying out, right, and refuting the Hoshang also applies to Longchen Ramjaba's viewpoint. Now, that being said, Geshe said, Longchen Ramjaba is really recognized as a highly realized master, okay, not just a scholar or intellectual kind. So we have to really analyze further what he said in the treasure on reality. Is that really his viewpoint, or he's just kind of asserted it for some other reasons, right? Just like in Buddha's case, we said Buddha said some things that requires interpretation, and Buddha said something definitive. So that now the question we have to ask is find out is whether what he said in the treasure on reality is his definitive standpoint, or he said it for a skillful reason or purpose, right? That we don't know, right? Yeah. Very good questions. Yeah.
The end,
Mm-hmm.
where even though they function. So I have a problem with the word even though. Geshe knows about this. We had a conversation about this in the kitchen about 4 years ago. The words like even though or despite. Can Geshe go into that? I know that we say things like this, but the issue is when we say words like despite and even though, they make it sound, it sounds like they're opposites. You know, those two words. Well, a lot of times I hear things said as on the basis of them being empty of intrinsic existence. I'm not speaking very well. I'm on a lot of medications, so just bear with me. On the basis of being empty of intrinsic existence, they function. Versus despite being empty of intrinsic existence, things function. Can we clarify that?
Okay, so where is your sort of difficulty? With this understanding, where we said things don't exist intrinsically, yet they function conventionally, right?
Yeah, the word yet, or although, or despite. See those three words?
Right.
It makes it sound like intrinsic existence and functionality are opposites. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Are they opposite or not? Is that what you should ask?
No. The way we say it sounds like they're opposite, and well, we know that they're actually what is that word we've been using?
Complementary.
Yes.
Okay.
So why do we keep saying things like this? When we say they're complementary, and then we go back and we say words like despite or although or yet.
Okay. Hala morang this go again ta. Pena nganzo ge da shungna ya chue thamje rangshung gi mandu na yang sarwa ge. An thanye de chaje tigir sa jarwa ge. Sa za morang da kodang de na yang se de ge rwa ge. De kuchi de chide ta da khaur chag do sa. Pena di lamne digo pena nganzo di rwa ge. Tende tongbe tong tongba tende de ko tunjo ni shi ge rwa ge. Rwa ta da chamba de ta nganzo khaso di labda ge thon rwa ge. Pena rangshung gi mandu ba ta 자체 태반이 그 팀버레스 랍시나 가려서 봐게 란싱기 먼저 나야 자체 티그레스 랍을 봐게 어디 칭조 세다 되겠지 가서 고들 디 직도 서다 디 가려는 디토르게 직도 셰르 세가 되나요
this 다 디 책 비제 용던 좀 this 다 러시 먼저 시디잖아 고모리아 야갈 고모즈 러시 먼저는 유네 테그 먼저 저바 휴시 버리 고모리 야갈 다 먼저 주다 막 히디는 두어로 와
나래
디크다 아니 오마베 키로제 아니 예 러시 머르시워 디비 자 메스요 마레시 러시 머르나 유데 가도 샤고요레시 유데 임벌 러시 초고 마리시 어디 세기를 지다 어디 되시고와 이렇게 들고
Geshe thought maybe that kind of expression, the wording is probably because of if we go back in the historical context, right, when these things happened, and there were many strong schools opponents, right, who believed in the intrinsic reality, and especially some of the Hindu schools. They were very dominating ones, right? And so now the Madhyamikans are trying to get their voice across that dominant voice. They say, you know what, what I'm saying is that even though things don't exist intrinsically, right, they function just fine, right? Not the one you are just telling me. So maybe that's the expression that happened, at the time. So, yeah.
Oh, this is what I say. No matter that thing you are, any channels be, even any usually got a very cheddar, you cheddar home to the moment of the world. Didn't get Roshi Morosi that you need me and the cheddar to was. Yeah, you need me as well, Martha. Roshi means you are. Roshi Moroka, you did what is it? Suya did Roshi Moro, take it as Savita to the Yontan to the Yonta. Six George Mungo.
So I think the essentialists, this, argue with the Madhyamikans. They said, what, if nothing exists intrinsically, right, then how could you assert cause and effect relationship among things? Okay, if nothing exists intrinsically, then nothing can exist at all, right, from their point of view. And that's why in response to them, I say, what, even though we assert that things are empty of intrinsic reality, right, we also assert the cause and effect relationship among things. So maybe that's how the conversation arguments happened, Yeah. But I think maybe my footnote is that if what works for you is like the complementarity between the things, just like between the dependent arising and emptiness, maybe that's how you should think. Probably that makes more sense to you, right?
Yeah, and it would seem like it would be more effective to assert that the absence of intrinsic existence is the condition that allows for function.
Right, yes.
Rather than on
right.
or despite.
Yeah. I want this one taking I just want to Cho dan che kasi tende inbe chi rangshin duwa ma sarwa ge. Rangshin ki ma duwa chi en tende yungur sarwa ge. Rangshin ma duwa Quran ki chi ne da gyujen di duwa chagwa warwa. O dur salam na ko tebur chag duwa sa warwa.
Rangshin ma karta.
Tong be chi.
Dira wa.
Tongza
Rangshin
chaje
ma
tigwa
duwa yi zang na.
chaje tigre sarwa.
Chaje tigre sigara.
Nare.
Rangshin tumna ne karsa disi wa di tutab sayat karu. Rawa sudo sheda da. Chida da chaje tigre si. chaje teba inzo rangshin ma duwa. Kuri pati jig yudendo duwa rawa. Wati duwa.
I think just like you said, if we say that it is the absence of intrinsic reality that makes it possible for the things to have cause and effect relationship. And because things exist, cause and effect relationship, so nothing exists intrinsically. So that's how it goes. Yeah. Any other thought? Okay, if not, we'll stop there. Gange lode demye dende ninda namda rabsebe chinye tango jije seje nije kuban leb kanda sebe zara maru mendon donge jese rozo gona poje da yala joje yangden so joda chedo nyemo nyelo leje charo chede Maria Muse Dunge Nyugo Chinye Chenze Radina Dene Daje Saje Dagu Yundeng Lunzo Jese Tugu Chuda Chuda Chunyi Jen Dalu Muse Jambe Yang La De Omara Bazana Omarabaza na di senden kyeje kera vezeje dalu temu memba rapsene kada tenje shunlo to na wanze dozo lode kyazu bujun beba de kesan kumbe chudo memba shen tenba zinla ondo jichu tanye shogun chala sowande Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and free us from the iron chains of our karma, who wields the sword of wisdom, heaving down suffering wherever sparks appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance, you who have been pure from the beginning, who have completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, I bow down to you, Manjushri, Amarabhajanadi. O compassionate one, with brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate beings, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, O Lobsang Tenzing Wangda, respectfully I pray.
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí Ngài điều phục hai chướng ngại, tựa nhật quang lan tỏa khắp mười phương, bậc thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim Ngài Bát Nhã Kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báo, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thủ thắng, cùng đại bi Ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử. Tiếng rồng vang Ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp chướng, gồm trí tuệ Ngài chặt đứt vô minh, tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn. Trưởng tử Như Lai tối thắng toàn giác, Ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân Ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tướng hạo Như Lai, đây đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, cúi xin Ngài tận diệt ám chướng vô minh. Om Arapasanadi. con khẩn cầu dưới gót sen bậc đại trí, ban pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh, được trí sáng con thâm nhập nghĩa màu, pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận giải. Như diệu hương ngọt ngào từ sen trắng, đản sanh nơi trí thủ thắng đại dương. Hồng danh Ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá, đấng thiện xảo uy dũng bảo tồn pháp bảo vô giá. Nam mô Lốp Song Tenzin Quang Đắc, xin cung kính trì niệm.
Ye